evening and welcome to Vote 2016, the SBS World News Election Special. I'm Janice Peterson, and after 8 weeks of campaigning, 8 weeks of crisscrossing the country and delivering the same key messages in different electorates, the neck-and-neck polls, well, tonight we have no clear winner as yet. Shortly, we'll be hearing from our election team, Chief Political Correspondent Catherine McGrath in the studio here with me, also Senior Political Correspondent Daniela Retorto with the Turnbull Cap in Sydney, and political reporter Brooke Boney with the Shorten team in Melbourne. We'll also speak with SBS reporters right across the country to let you know what's happened in your region. But first, here's a quick look at how the day unfolded. Well, 10 months ago, Malcolm Turnbull unleashed his backroom deal to topple Tony Abbott as Prime Minister. Tonight, we're still waiting to hear whether the move has been successful. Well, Catherine McGrath, of course, is with me in the studio. Kath, let's take a closer look at the state of the House. Take us through these results.
Well, Janice, when you look at the seats where they have lost seats, New South Wales has been a real problem tonight. Some of the seats that we knew would go have, but there are more. Now, let's have a look at that list. We've got Patterson, Barton, MacArthur, Dobell, Eden Monaro, Macquarie, Lindsay, all in New South Wales. In Tasmania, Bass, Lyons and Braddon, those 3 Liberal Party seats have all gone. So, we're looking in these states at really strong results, for the Labor Party. In Queensland, look at that, Herbert, Longman, Mayo and Hindmarsh in South Australia. Mayo has gone to the Nick Xenophon team, Hindmarsh to the Labor Party, and Solomon in the Northern Territory. Now, Solomon was expected to go. But, we have seats that were expected to go. As I say, they were accepting that would be between, 8 and 10 seats, but we're up around 16 seats. So they're looking at losses in so many states. And when you look at the swings, now, different swings everywhere. And I've noted the swings. In New South Wales, 3.73% swing. Victoria, just 1% swing to Labor. Queensland, 3%. Tasmania, 6%. So incredibly strong swing to Labor there. Northern Territory, just 1 seat, but an 8% swing. And South Australia, a 4% swing. Now, I've heard from the Prime Minister's office, one of his advisors said that their view is there are about, in some seats, 30,000 pre-poll and postal votes. So it'll take a long while for them to be counted. So they feel that they will advantage them and in some of the close seats. But I think there's shock at the minute because they expected that their economic message was getting through. Indeed. And they didn't expect to be losing so many seats.
Kath, I think at this point it might be wise to have a look at where we've come from. Let's have a look at what the House looked like before this election. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, well, as you can see there, look at that big sea of blue there. Remember, of course, the last election in 2013 was the Tony Abbott landslide. After the Gillard-Rudd years, Tony Abbott won the last election, 90 seats. The coalition came into in that. Now we're looking at reduced now back to 74. Now they need 76, that's 75 plus 1, half the House. Yes. So they're getting close if they get a few more seats. But the authority of the Prime Minister, if he just falls over the line to 76, or if he needs independence to govern, is in a much more weakened position. The Prime Minister expected to be able to deliver around, 82 seats.
Well, we look forward to some of those.
Let's take a look at some of the other seats across here in Victoria. We have just heard that the seat of Batman is very close. In fact, the counting of votes there will probably still continue. We've seen Alex Bardell do quite well in that seat. She's just shy of the sitting member David Feeney, who's about 600 votes ahead of her at the moment. Melbourne Ports as well. We've seen, in fact, that the Liberal candidate there, Owen Guest, has received the majority of the votes, although there's about 700 separating the sitting member from Labor, Michael Danby, with the Greens candidate, Steph Hodgkins-May. So they're pretty excited there as well. They think that they may come across, but it's really tight, and it's a three-cornered race as they've been putting it all night tonight. Now, in the seat of Higgins, that's a blue ribbon Liberal seat. the sitting member, Assistant Treasurer Kelly O'Dwyer, has retained that seat. In fact, she only had a swing of about 4% against her, but the Greens gained an 11% swing, and that was mainly at the cost of the Labor Party there. Carl Catter not doing as well as Labor has in previous years. Chisholm, that is the big one here. That's the seat that has been lost by Labor. It was already marginal, and it was something that they were hoping to cling on to, a seat there, but they've lost. That's in Melbourne's seat, and they weren't helped there by the retirement of the popular member and former Speaker Anna Burke, so that has gone to the Liberal Party. The seat of Dunkley in Melbourne's southern outskirts, that also saw retiring MP Bruce Bilson leave, but the candidate Chris Crawford has been able to hold on. There's been a 6% swing against him, but they have retained that seat. Now the big story, of course, is in Tasmania, where the Liberal Party has lost all 3 of its seats there. Especially the biggest swings we've seen have been in Bass. They have lost that seat, Andrew Nikolic, with a 10% swing against him. And Labor's Ross Hart has won that so-called one-term wonder seat. So it still is a long night ahead here in Melbourne for some of the seats. Corangamite has been retained by Sarah Henderson, which was another one to watch here. It's interesting. Right now, I think the party, though, will continue.
Well, one of the most interesting seats in this campaign has been New England. The sitting member and Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce against an out-of-retirement independent Tony Windsor. It's been a highly publicised fight between those two. SBS reporter Julia Calixto is in Tamworth, where Barnaby Joyce has claimed victory.
Well, after a very long and sometimes nervous and sometimes nasty campaign, Barnaby Joyce has retained the seat of New England. Now, it was a very tough slog, and for some time nobody wanted to call it. They thought it was going to be very close, but Barnaby Joyce has won by quite a significant majority at the moment. But tonight it's all celebrations here for the Nationals and another win for the Coalition.
Well, Queensland has been the focus tonight, with so many marginal seats up for grabs. SBS reporter Stefan... OK, actually, let's change tack now. Catherine, looking at these results, is it possible... Senior political correspondent Daniela Retorto at the Sofitel Wentworth Hotel in Sydney with the Turnbull team. Daniela, what's happening there at the moment?
Still not very much, Janice. I would describe it very much as just a nervous energy that's infecting the room here. Earlier at the start of the program, I did tell you that John Howard had arrived, and he told reporters that he is very sorry for those Liberals who have lost their seats. Let's have a listen.
Can I say to those who are hanging on as the count proceeds to wafer-thin outcomes, I wish them all the very best, but as I said a moment ago, it is for the Prime Minister to speak on behalf of the Coalition in relation to the overall campaign. Thank you.
Now, I know John Howard would very much feel the loss of Jamie Briggs in Mayo in South Australia. John Howard personally went and helped Jamie Briggs' campaign. Jamie Briggs used to work for John Howard. He was an industrial relations advisor in the Howard office in government, and I was there that day with Mr Howard at the Senior Citizens Club in the seat of Mayo, and he was very much patting Jamie Briggs on the back, introducing him to the electors of Mayo and saying he's a good man, this man. Of course, I think trying to undo some of the damage that was caused to Mr Briggs and his reputation over that incident in a Hong Kong bar, which forced him to resign from the ministry. So I think Mr Howard's very genuine there in talking about keenly feeling the loss of Jamie Briggs' seat. That has been Mayo a seat, a blue ribbon Liberal seat, since 1984, and when it was created it was held by the former Foreign Minister, Australia's longest serving Foreign Minister, Alexander Downer, from 1984 until his retirement in 2008. So when you've got Liberals losing those blue ribbon seats like that, I think it stings very much. Not sure if we've touched too much on the Senate, But I mean, that's another fascinating thing. Again, I'll go back to my home state of South Australia, where Nick Xenophon not only claiming the scalp of Jamie Briggs, but looks like he'll get at least 3 senators in his own right in the Senate. The return of Pauline Hanson in Queensland, Darren Hinch in Victoria, Jackie Lambie in Tasmania. The whole point, the whole reason why Malcolm Turnbull called a double dissolution election after he pushed through changes to Senate voting was to clear out the Senate. He called it unruly, unworkable, saying some of the senators that got in on very tiny margins were actually a bit of a disgrace, a sham of the electoral system. Looks like he's going to end up in a couple of weeks' time when we get the Senate result with one that's much more unworkable.
A very hostile Senate, it looks like, if Malcolm Turnbull's able to squeak over the line. Thank you. That's Daniela Retordo joining us from the Turnbull headquarters, but pretty quiet behind her. Well, let's talk about Queensland. It has been a big focus with so many marginal seats up for grabs. SBS reporter Stefan Armbruster is in the seat of Longman on the Sunshine Coast, once considered a relatively safe Liberal seat. Stefan, Wyatt Roy in trouble tonight?
Wyatt Roy in big trouble tonight. He was holding this seat with a margin of 6.9%, and now that seems to have been wiped out. It's a big deal for Labor. Susan Lamb, the candidate here, she's really taking one of the big scalps of the election. Wyatt Roy being a close confidant of the Prime Minister, and also it's effectively a ministerial scalp. So you can hear there's great celebrations here in Caboolture, north of Brisbane, in the seat of Longman. Now, Wyatt Roy, he won the seat in 2010. He was rewarded in last year by the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull for his support in having Tony Abbott removed as Prime Minister and having Malcolm Turnbull installed. Wyatt Roy, at this stage, he's not conceding defeat.
This seat has a history of being quite volatile and sort of throwing up unexpected results. The other thing is the Labor Party threw everything they had at this. The unions campaigned very aggressively. They were very personal, very grubby. They spread the Medicare lies with a great deal of enthusiasm. And unfortunately, if you throw enough mud, that does tend to stick. But I'm very proud of the campaign we ran it.
Now, there's a number of Queensland, a whole lot of Queensland seats that are really hanging on a knife's edge tonight. Capricornia is one of those up near Rockhampton. Michelle Landry just hanging in there from a challenge from Lisa Neaton. That one looks like it'll be going down right down to the count of the last votes counted. Herbert, the seat of Herbert, which has got a lot of largesse during this election campaign. First Labor promising $100 million for a stadium up there, that being matched later in the campaign by the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. In the seat of Herbert there, the sitting member Ewan Jones, he looks like he's in pretty big trouble too. That could well be taken by Labor. And the seat of Petrie, the most marginal LNP seat in Australia, again that's sitting on a knife's edge. Neither party is calling that one yet, and that could really go down to the last votes. A number of other interesting seats. The only independent coming from Queensland, well, sort of independent, Bob Catter, he has come back with a much larger vote than he had in the last election. That's being put down to him actually campaigning in his seat rather than all across Australia. And there'll be some interesting results in the Senate. Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party has been polling quite strongly in seats all up and down the Queensland coast. That's it for the lower house candidate she has. So she's in with a good chance for the Senate. The Senate breakdown, the 12 seats here in Queensland, there looks like there'll probably be 5 to the LNP, 4 to Labor, 1 to Greens, Larissa Warder, the Deputy Leader, coming back in, and the other 2 up for grab, and one of those could well be Pauline Hanson.
Stefan Armbruster, thanks for that update and giving us a look at the state of play in Queensland. Well, now to one of the most remote electorates in the country. It's called Leichhardt and it takes in part of far north Queensland and Thursday Island in the Torres Strait. Reporter Rachel Hocking is there and took a look at what happened on election day.
Well, there weren't huge queues to vote here on Thursday Island today, where about 1,600 people from here and surrounding islands are on the electoral roll. Now, Leichhardt is a marginal seat, but the bookies are tipping Liberal National MP Warren Entsch to keep it, even though they're saying it's going to be the tightest contest in decades. I've also been chatting to locals about some of the issues that matter to them, and high on a lot of people's minds is the cost of living. Went down to the shop and bought 2 litres of milk for $4.80.
It's like we get it fresh, but the price that we're paying for stuff is beyond a joke.
Should be our people in because it's our island. They should be employed in every government department and in the stores here.